When the words coming out of your mouth are true and you believe what you're saying, that's authenticity. Welcome back to another episode of I Am Nineveh. You know, I love to start off this show with a question, an inquisitive question. And I almost guarantee you're going to answer yes to my question, but I still want to ask it because it's going to set the stage for today's episode. So here's my cue to you. Have you ever been triggered? Now, I guarantee that 100% of you, 100% of us, myself included, just answered yes to that question silently. Here's the thing. We are triggered more than ever before. Wouldn't you agree? Why is that? You know, what can we do about it? And when should we take our triggers more seriously than, you know, getting upset at a social media post? A lot of social media content out there that have trigger warnings, and that's to warn us that this content may actually piss us off. Pissing us off or getting pissed off about some type of content is one thing, but truly being triggered is an entirely different story. So what exactly is a trigger? We're going to dive in deep, and this is probably going to go a little bit longer than my typical 20, 30-minute episode. So bear with me. We're probably going to go up to 40 minutes. We'll see. So what exactly is a trigger? In today's day and age, I think we've really minimized what a trigger actually is. According to healthline.com, you know, I'm going to come at you with the statistics as a former broadcast journalist for over 10 years. So I'm always going to give you some stats and some facts. So according to healthline.com, triggers are anything that might cause a person to recall a traumatic experience they've had. For example, graphic images of violence might be a trigger for some people. Less obvious things, including songs, odors, or even colors, can also be triggers depending on someone's experience. The article goes on to say, in mental health terms, a trigger refers to something that affects your emotional state, often significantly. So we're not talking about a little bit of discomfort or getting pissed off a little bit. We're talking about a significant shift in your emotional state. And this significant shift can cause overwhelm and even distress. So according to healthline.com, that's what we mean when we say trigger. It really emotionally disturbs you at a core level. A trigger affects your ability to remain present in the moment. So it's that disturbing to your body's ecosystem. It may bring up specific thought patterns or influence your behavior. Reading or watching something about a similar traumatic event, this is from the article, can also trigger distressing memories or flashbacks for people living with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. In short, triggers are to be taken seriously. Yet in today's world, we often make light of the term trigger, don't we? Trigger warning, or we say, I'm about to trigger you on social media. That's sort of like a famous line we all use to catch people's attention. By we, I mean me. I have been guilty of this as well. I've been guilty of engaging the social media phenomenon. You know, working in broadcast news, I know that to get your attention, you know, sometimes we got to say things like that from like a marketing perspective. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. Why? This is what we're going to talk about today. The internet and today's political climate, I think, has actually heightened our sensitivity to triggers even more, which means, again, that we are triggered more than ever before. We're all walking around triggered, and a lot of times we are inducing the trigger. Many of us are actually pulling the triggers on our own by engaging with things, people, and content that gets us into this hyper arousal state. Like, why are you trying to trigger yourself? Think about that for a moment. How many things are you actually doing in your life in terms of the people that you surround yourself with, the content that you're engaging with or reading, that is actually inducing that trigger state for you? And, you want to avoid being in that hyper arousal state, and social media content can do that to us. So today's episode is all about being triggered. What does it mean to be triggered? Knowing the difference between something discomforting versus triggering, and when to lean into the trigger. Because personally, triggers can sometimes be our greatest teachers, but only if you're ready. Okay? I think warning label, only if you're ready. Do not lean into your triggers unless you are ready. And when we lean into our triggers, it can be painful because it brings up past trauma, and trauma is not something that should be processed alone. It should be processed with a professional. That's just my opinion. First, I want to share a story with you of how I realized what was really triggering me. And as a result, I had to explore why. Oftentimes, we avoid our triggers, but at some point, your mind and body is going to be ready to process an emotion or a trauma that you didn't process at the time, and for good reason, because perhaps your mind and body was trying to keep you safe. But at some point, it will come up. The body and the mind will be ready to release that emotion and process it, and it can be very painful, right? And my point is that it will be brought up, and that's actually what happened to me in this past year. And so I want to share a little bit about that. A lot of us, though, run away from the past, do we not? We run away from the pain of our past. I know that I personally have. And what I discovered is that while some people cover up their trauma with drugs and alcohol, I personally covered up my trauma, unprocessed trauma, and unprocessed triggers. So I'll kind of use those two words interchangeably. Trauma, triggers, right? There are things that can trigger a trauma that we experienced that we didn't process, for example. So one of the things that I personally used to cover it all up was achievement. Yes, so let me tell you, today's message is for you, the high performer, hustling type A personality boss babe who has built a persona on achievement and accolades. Ooh, yeah. Honey, I'm here to give you a reality check that was delivered to me uninvited, by the way, in 2022 and a little bit into 2023. Although I am getting over the hump and I'm getting to the other side, amen. Running away from trauma and things that trigger you deeply, not just discomfort you, but triggered you on a deep level, are going to at some point come back to haunt you. If this resonates with you, because I know we're a few minutes into the episode now, I want you to keep listening. So here's what happened to me. I'd shared in a past episode, if you have not listened to The Devil That We Call Anxiety, listen to that show. It is an amazing show, and I know a lot of people got value out of it. I had shared in a past episode about my physical anxiety and how I've been on the journey to figure out the root cause. Turns out I'm triggered AF. Yeah. I've been triggered a lot in my life, but nothing like 2022 and the beginning of 2023 has brought me in many of these moments have actually brought me to my knees in prayer, asking God, why is this happening? Help me. What are you trying to tell me? You see, the body and the mind is such an intelligent instrument, right? And a lot of times we just want to stay in our comfort zone, right? You got to look at your pain, whether it's mental or physical, as your body and mind trying to communicate with you. And so it's hard to think about and be grateful for in the moment, but be grateful for it because the body and the mind is trying to communicate with you. So if you're experiencing physical anxiety or any kind of mental things going on or any triggers, since we're talking about triggers, right? If you're experiencing a trigger, it is your body and your mind trying to communicate something to you. You're supposed to learn something. You're supposed to shift something in your life. You're supposed to make changes and be grateful for that, because for the people that don't listen to their body and mind when it is trying to communicate to you, that means you're creating more dis-ease in the body. And that's when disease actually shows up. So it's very important that we get in tune, I think, with our triggers, with our body and mind, and listen to this intelligent instrument that we have. Because I've learned that the only way to it, whatever it is that I'm trying to get to, is through it. And there is no other way. And sometimes we just want to get to it. And we don't want to have to go through it to get to it. And I get that. But there's going to be some uncomfortable moments as you do that. So I'm actually part of a faith-based mastermind for business owners called Wellspring, incredible group of human beings. Every Monday we get together in our pods and we worship, we talk, we get vulnerable. Vulnerable? Did I just say the word vulnerable? Because the me 2 years ago hated the word vulnerable and vulnerability. In fact, I did an episode with my husband, John, back when we had a show together called Toxic Vulnerability. And there is such thing as toxic vulnerability, but I had a toxic response personally to the word vulnerable. Why was that? It was clearly a trigger for me. So I'm in a group that I told you about just now with amazing women. I hardly knew them at the time as I'm sharing the story with you. And here we are together online, and we're supposed to share what we're struggling with. I'm like, this is too much for me. I'm doing this. I don't want to focus on my problems. I want to focus on the triumph. I don't want to focus on the tragedy. Just get me to the triumph. I like the triumph part of life. Don't we all? But the only way to it is through it, right? And if you're not willing to go through it, then you don't get to have the it. So one day we have the speaker come chat in our group. Jenny Allen, the author of the book, Get Out of Your Head, which I am finally reading right now. I'm almost done with it. And let me tell you, it is a game changer. As Jenny was talking to our group, she kept talking about sharing the 2%. Let's get vulnerable. Let's share the 2%. Everyone in the group is engaged. They're about it. Some people are crying. And you know what I am doing? I am muting her. I am like, this girl needs to go on mute. I am literally thinking in my mind, OMG, STFU, I cannot listen to this vulnerability crap, and I cannot listen to people's 2%. Wow. Doesn't sound like I'm a very compassionate person admitting that, does it? So perhaps I need to work on compassion. And that's some feedback I've received before. And I can't even stand to listen to the 2% because it makes me that uncomfortable. Does it make you uncomfortable? That's my question to you. So I was clearly triggered. Thanks for tuning into my show. As the co-owner and COO of Superhuman, I want to invite you to learn more about how we help high-achieving men and women just like you become top performers in their bodies and minds. Book a free call with my team. Go to superhuman.com to get on our schedule now. I'm sharing that story because it's an example of what can happen when we are triggered. And I wasn't just uncomfortable. There's a difference between discomfort, where I'd be listening and I'm like, oh, it's kind of annoying, right? But I was having a full body response to this. My heart's pounding. I'm texting my husband, John, and I'm telling him this chick is irritating me. Poor Jenny. She did nothing wrong, by the way. She was just there to deliver a very important message that I clearly did not want to hear, was not ready for it. And in the past, I've been triggered by words like vulnerability, like I shared. Compassion was another word that I was very triggered by. And healing. Come on now, guys. Just get over it. What's your problem? Get over it. No need to heal. Some people take way too long healing, but that's not my place to judge. But I was just in judgment of the word healing in general. How awful is that? Why? I need to lean into that trigger. My mother actually used to tell me, you have no compassion, your heart is like ice. And I'm not saying that's the right thing to say to your kid. And in many ways, I think I understand now that what she was trying to say, right? You're shut down, your heart's like ice because you're protecting yourself. What from? What are you protecting yourself from? Why is that so triggering to you? What happened? What trauma happened in your life that you haven't processed that you need to process so that you can finally free yourself? So Jenny stops talking and we get into our pods, me and the group of women, my sisters in Christ, and it's my turn to talk. And what I mean by that is we're all meeting virtually after Jenny is done talking, the author of this incredible book, which I highly recommend that you read. We're in the pods and we're discussing, like, what did we learn? What was our takeaway? And so it gets to me and they ask, Nineveh, what was your takeaway? And for the first time, I decided to just be radically honest in the moment, completely uncensored. I told them, I am triggered. I muted her. I am so bothered by vulnerability. I even admitted that I muted some of them as they started to share. How rude of me. But at least I was radically honest. And as I was radically honest, you want to know what happened to me? I ugly cried. I don't even like the term ugly cry, honestly, because nobody's tears are ugly. And I'm just trying to give you actually a mental image in terms of a meme of what it looked like in this moment for me. You know, I am so very used to always being strong and always used to having, not saying like this appearance, but I work in business. I own multiple businesses, and I worked in broadcast. And in broadcast, we learned to never show emotion, because showing emotion would show that you have bias. And so I think I turned into a little icebox so that it would be easy for me not to have to feel the emotion of some of the stories and show the emotion, so that I wouldn't be a biased reporter, right? So I'm radically honest with them. I'm just, tears are streaming down my face, and I told them of my pain. And you know what happened when I told them that 2%, when I shared that 2% part of me, they teared up with me. And you know what happened next? They spoke life into me. Wow, I've actually got friends who love me for me, not for how brilliant my business mind is or because I have this or that, but because of who I am, all of me, not just parts of me. Wouldn't you love to be loved for all of you, not just parts of you? So many of us are walking around showing only parts of us because we're afraid of what would happen if people actually knew all of us. And the minute that you are authentic and have the audacity to be yourself and to lay it all out on the line and on the table and stop caring what other people are going to think, is the minute that you set yourself free. And it's easier said than done, and I get that. And this trigger trauma work is actually part of the path to get you to feeling that freedom and that inner peace. At the end of the day, all of us want to be loved, not just for parts of us, but all of us, including that 2%. That 2% is what holds us back in life, the 2% of trauma we need to process so that we can overcome and move on and live our lives in boldness. So thank you, Jenny, because I am powering through her book, and at moments I am triggered, and I am leaning into those triggers. Why so triggered? The me today is uncomfortably leaning into vulnerability, and I would dare say that I'm comfortably leaning into vulnerability these days, leaning into that compassion, cultivating compassion more, and healing. You know, some of us spend a lifetime caught up in healing, while others of us, there's like these extremes if you think about it. So some people you meet, they're just, I'm healing. It's like, well, how long do you need to heal, right? And it's not my place to judge like how it could take as long or as little time as you need it to. I can't answer that for you, but some people spend a lifetime too caught up in the pain and in the past and in the healing process. You know what I'm saying? And there are others of us, especially high performers, high achievers, the type A, that's who I'm talking to, that have been running away. And they've been running away so long that it's time to stop running and face the enemy, to put together a strategic battle plan and go to war with the intention of winning, with a plan on having a victorious outcome. And that is my message to you today. What is triggering you is actually holding you back. What is triggering you can be your greatest teacher. So 3 things to help you overcome triggers. Are you ready for it? I'm actually going to power through these for you. Number 1, depending on your triggers and whether they are connected to some deep-rooted trauma, time to heal. Ain't nothing wrong with therapy, girlfriend or boyfriend, if you're a man listening. I'm currently undergoing something called EMDR. So my number 1 tip for you is to ask for help. Some of us are too loud and we're too proud, and there is a major stigma when it comes to mental health. I'm putting it in like quotation marks and air quotation marks because like, oh, mental health. Something's wrong upstairs. There's nothing wrong with you. You're totally normal, by the way. Everybody has trauma. I haven't met a person that doesn't have trauma. And if they say they don't, like, they're totally lying. You know what I'm saying? It's just that we're not as open about it. And some things, hey, yeah, are not meant to be shared in the public space, but I would encourage you, if you have suffered from severe trauma, to do seek out stories of other people that have been through the same things as you. So I think it is so helpful in today's day and age to be courageous and to share your story. Like, we are not sharing enough stories. I'm telling you, stories save souls. They have the ability to transform other people's lives. Your voice matters and your story matters. And that's why I'm sharing with you what I share about myself. I could be talking about anything. You know, I could use this platform and this podcast to talk about business strategy, which I will do. But I am not going to have a show that doesn't talk about the real deal. We need to talk about the real stuff too, in addition to all the other things, right? So the number one tip is to ask for help. Some of us are too loud and proud. We've got the ego, or it's because that stigma, and you're just afraid of what it would mean to admit that, you know, you maybe got some issues in your tissues, and you certainly don't want to label yourself as someone who is struggling with mental health, because when you think of mental health, you're thinking like insane asylum, you're going to get locked up. But no. And it's just a shame that we've painted it that way. That's a very small percentage of people that get to that state, right? There's a spectrum when it comes to our mental health, and there's a spectrum when it comes to struggling with our mental health. So let's frame it that way, struggling with our mental health, rather than calling it mental health illness, which some people do suffer from. There's a spectrum to this. So we need to normalize that sometimes in life, and everybody is going to face this phase in life. Are we kidding ourselves? That sometimes in life we are not okay. And guess what? That is okay, and that is normal. So many of us hide in shame and guilt that we even feel triggered or low. We got to ask for help. I believe you got to speak it to heal it. Don't hold it inside. That's what the enemy wants. The enemy wants you to hold it inside so that it festers and it grows, so that it grows in darkness. When you give darkness light, what happens to the darkness? Darkness cannot survive in light. So when you speak it and you share it, you heal it because you've taken it out of the darkness of your mind and in yourself, which is when we tend to ruminate and when we tend to begin to build feelings of shame and guilt. But when we share it, we free ourselves because we realize people aren't actually judging us, and they begin to call us courageous and thank us. And you're like, oh, wow. So bring that darkness into lightness, because darkness cannot survive when the light is there. So number one thing to do is please ask for help. It is a-okay to ask for help. Number two is this. Ready? Ask for support. Get support. Very important. Don't even ask. Get it. Get support, whether it's a group of friends, a friend, or a group of people you aren't friends with that you can connect with as you navigate those triggers and trauma. Get support. This is key to actually helping you not feel alone in the battle, and it does normalize what you're going through, and it gives you hope that you can overcome it, especially if you're connecting with someone, let's say a group, like a support group, that several people are maybe going through what you're going through, so that helps to normalize that you're not alone, or perhaps you're talking to a friend who's overcome a similar issue that you have, and now that's given you an example of, oh, here's this person who was going through tragedy and they were able to reach the other side, and they're now they're in triumph. So from tragedy to triumph, and having that example in terms of a friend or someone that you can look up to is very important. The worst thing that you can do, guys, is to try to do this alone, because that's where the enemy wants us. Whether you believe in God or not, there is an enemy, whether it's the enemy of your mind or some entity that you believe is the enemy, like the devil, or people in your life that are actually dragging you down. What they want, whether we're calling it the enemy of the mind, the devil, or the people around you that are acting like devils, right, that are negative. Well, let's just call it negative forces, right? The negative forces, they want you to suffer in silence alone and in the dark. So when you get support and when you bring it to the light, that darkness is going to dissipate, like I mentioned. Very important to remember. That's why I mention it. Number 3, take action. You're going to need a game plan, a strategy, a battle plan to see your way through this. If you're going through something difficult, if you're leaning into your triggers like I have been and wanting to actually process the emotions that you didn't process in the past that you want to overcome. The last thing that you want to do, though, is last thing you want is to get stuck in a cycle where you're just continuing to kind of spiral out of control with your thoughts. You can't treat this time in your life like all the other times. Does that make sense? You actually have to create extras. For example, how do you plan to optimize your body as you're going through this? I want you to think of healing your trauma and your triggers like going into surgery. You wouldn't just go into surgery and then actually my therapist that I'm using for EMDR used this example, and I want to share it with you because it was like a light bulb went off for me. I'm like, are you kidding me, Nineveh? Seriously? You can't continue to operate as if nothing had happened, as if you're not going into surgery. Makes sense? And high performers, type A, oh yeah, we're strong. We can handle everything. But baby girl, you're going to crack under all that weight and all that pressure. Trust me, okay? At some point you will. And so what I'm saying is it's like, let's be proactive and preemptive here as you take action to overcome the triggers and process your traumas and go through the healing. Is you want to have a game plan. What's that game plan look like? You know, how do you plan to optimize your body? Under normal circumstances, for example, having alcohol would be fine for me. When I say normal circumstances, I'm talking about when there's nothing traumatic going on or I'm not trying to process things from the past. So if everything is fine and amazing and you're in a joyous stage of life and you have a little bit of alcohol, like for me, I react fine to it. But when you're going through difficult times, you may want to look at your schedule, your body, the things that you're eating, the things that you're putting in it, and asking yourself this question, alcohol may not be the best thing for you as you navigate this because you need a sound mind. Maybe eating a bunch of sugary treats is not good for me because it makes me feel a certain way during this time. I'm just making that up, right? What else? Write down how your ideal day would look like during this period of time. In fact, I encourage everyone, regardless of whether you are processing triggers or trauma, to annually or even quarterly, depending on how busy your life is and what kind of performer you are in life. Are you type A, boss babe, boss man, boss person? Then you want to be assessing your ideal day. What does my ideal day look like? And then compare it to the days that you're experiencing now. And for me, there's a list of non-negotiables like exercise, strength training, walking, not overworking. And a lot of times high performers use work to mask the trauma. They use it as their therapy. Whatever action you're taking, whether it's journaling, walking, exercising, you want to combine that with therapy, the support group. You want to create an optimal routine for yourself and stick with it and make sure that your partner, if you've got a partner, whether it's husband or wife, you want to make sure your partner support, girlfriend or boyfriend, that supports you in that routine, or that you get extra help while you stick to this new routine as you go through what you're going through. The more winning days that you stack together, the better that you can take care of your triggers. And, a lot of times as I'm talking about triggers and trauma, maybe that's not what you're going through right now. Maybe you're not in this healing phase of healing the past, but perhaps you're dealing with something in the present, for example. Perhaps you've experienced some trauma in the present right now and you're going through a difficult time. You're going to have triggers. You're dealing with trauma, and I would encourage you to process it. And as you're processing it, have compassion with yourself. Take it easy on yourself. You cannot operate as if you were in a joyous stage in life. When we're joyous and our cup is very full and we're not going through a difficult time, we can take on more, right? Because we feel like we can take on the world. But when we're going through a tough time, whether it's something tough that's happened to you or within the family unit or extended family, you need to realize what stage in life you're at and that you cannot operate, like I said, the way that you would as if nothing was wrong or it will catch up to you. So those are my 3 tips, the very things that I am implementing right now and have been implementing. Number 1, real quick, ask for help. Working through triggers and traumas is not a road that you go out on alone. Number 2, get support. Make sure that you are surrounded by people who support you on the journey to getting better. Talk to a friend, join a support group. Number 3, and this is one of the most critical ones, of course, is to take action. You got to put together a battle plan, stick to it, and have that accountability factor. That's where therapy can actually come in. You know, a lot of people hire business coaches. Well, what about your mental health coach? Do you have a mental health coach? I actually just signed up for a mental health coach, believe it or not. Why would I not do that? I have a personal training system, right? I've got Superhuman that keeps me accountability in terms of my body and my optimizing my body, my physical body. We've got doctors, right? That's what our health insurance is for. And think about it. We hire business coaches to help us with optimizing our business. Why wouldn't we hire someone to help us optimize our mental health, whether it's a mental performance coaching program that you join or a mental health coach or a therapist, whatever you want to call them, they fall into that category. So number 3 is the most important thing, is that you're taking action, that you've put together a battle plan, that you stick to it. And I think when you try to do it alone, you don't have that accountability factor. It's very difficult to do. I watch people do this all the time in fitness. Drives me absolutely nuts. Like, here's the plan. Okay, good luck going at it alone. Same tips. Ask for help, get support, take action. Those 3 tips can be applied. They're applicable to anything that you attempt in terms of a goal in your life. Today's episode is all about applying it to your mental health. As always, that's all I got for you today. As always, I hope this show has meant something for you, that it's helped you. And I'm hoping this episode helps someone out there. If it resonates with you, I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear from you. You know that I'm most active on Instagram. You can find me at Nineveh Madsen. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you next time. If you're loving this show, connect with me on Instagram, share this episode, and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. Thanks for listening.